And it's okay. So I just got the notification. The stream is active. I'm not yet seeing it on the page because, like I said, I think we do have the time delay. So let me just wait a second, make sure that the stream will become active. There it is. I don't know if you heard that.
All right.
Hang on 2 seconds, 2 more seconds, just to make sure that I've got all the right buttons pushed. Okay, and so we are officially good to go. Mingo, it's really nice to have you join us on our podcast. I do want to make a quick mention that unfortunately Doreen is not able to join us this evening. So tonight we are not the minutiae trois. We are just, I don't know what is two. We are just two minutiae. We're not three. So she is not available, but we are very excited that we did get Mingo to participate with us in our episode 3. He is going to be presenting a very interesting homicide case that I cannot wait to hear the details on. Before we jump into the case information, Mingo, if you could give us a little background about yourself, if you can kind of tell us where you're coming from and some of your experience, I think it'd be really good for our viewers to kind of get an idea of who you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for having me in this event. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mingo Villarreal. I started in the Houston area. I went through the police academy back in '86, came on with the city of Humble, which is where this case took place, where I then worked for the city of Humble for 23 years and retired in 2010. While in Humble, I went ahead and was instrumental in opening the first lab, the ID lab, in 1994. So that's when I got off the streets and started working crime scenes and latent prints. And so that's where my passion, and I like to say my first love was fingerprints, and my passion is the reconstruction of crime scenes. And it's been a wonderful career. I retired in 2010. I got certified by the II as a senior crime scene analyst back in '98. And then I was involved with the II, the International Association for Identification, for a while. And I was the chairman of the Crime Scene Certification Board back in 2005 for about 10 years. Then in 2015, I went ahead and ran for the board of directors while we were in Sacramento for a 100-year celebration of the II. And I was on the board of directors, and then in San Antonio, 2018, I ran for 4th VP, and I was honored to serve as the president of the II last year. I am currently the chairman of the board. Through my career, when I retired, I had been a contractor for ECTAP, which is a training program with the Department of Justice for international countries. And so I got involved with that and did a lot of training in Colombia and in South America, Central America, Panama, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico. That's one of the reasons I retired, so that I could focus more of my time in training in Mexico. And we were training the crime scene and also the latent prints. So those two fields were primary focus for the training. That was great. And then in 2014, the Houston Forensic Science Center opened its doors, and I took a leap, and I went with them full time after doing a contractor stint where I hired all the latent print examiners for the Houston Forensic Science Center, set up their latent print unit, and then I came on as a full-time helping them with the training. I was director of training, and then I was director of security while we moved to a new location. And I ended up staying. I was with CSU for the deputy position of crime scene, where I was there for another 4 years. And finally, after 7 years with them, I left 4 years ago and have now was doing the contract work again with the Department of Justice, and was great and got to go international. Went to Nepal and Sri Lanka and Panama and a lot of the other countries. But come this year, there was a shift in the federal funds. So I came across a very great friend of mine who had gone to the academy together. And while I was updating him on me waiting on the position with the feds, he offered me this position where I am now. So I am now with the San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office. It's a county over 600 square miles north of Houston. And so he gave me an opportunity to come up here and help with cold cases. And he now has me in the special investigator unit. And I'm helping also with the evidence and doing a lot of things here. And it's great. And I'm loving it. And I never did lose my commission. So I've been a police officer sworn ever since 1988. And so that helped. And then there was an easy, smooth transition. So I'm still involved, obviously, in the cases. Just had my first scene here last week. And today I ended up spending a little time with the morgue and picking up some evidence. But yeah, I love it. I can't get enough of it. And, one day I'll retire.
That's amazing. What an amazing career you've had. Holy moly, that's awesome.
I've been very fortunate. Very, very fortunate. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're really excited to hear about the case that you're presenting today. Doreen and I were talking about it. We had all of these thoughts about the information in it. So I can't wait to hear what the story is going to be. If you'd like to go ahead and get your presentation ready, we'll go ahead and turn it over so that you can tell us everything that happened.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here then.
And while you're doing that, we have some folks that have started the chat. We've got some folks from Colombia, and we've got somebody from Belize. How exciting. So it seems like maybe some of your friends are tuning in and watching the show.
Excellent.
Yeah, that is so cool.
All right. Are you able to see the PowerPoint?
I can see it nice and clear. You have the little, yeah. Other than that, yep, looks good. You're good to go.
Excellent. Good deal. All right. So this is a capital murder case that the media labeled as the Good Samaritan. And the Good Samaritan, again, this is a case while I was in Humble, in the city of Humble. And this all took place on June 5th of 2006. And I'll go ahead and narrate what I'm showing here. So the Good Samaritan on the evening of December 5th pulls up to a gas station, Shell station, at FM 1960 and North Houston Avenue in the city of Humble, Texas. As he exits his car, another customer warns him that a black male suspect, now fleeing towards an empty lot across the street, has just robbed the store. So moments later, the suspect jumps into a car and drives off northbound on North Houston Avenue. So at 7-Eleven, the Good Samaritan dials 911. This is a Shell station, and this is the location where the Shell station is. And we'll see some other slides where I'll explain what these roads, main highways up here and the intersections are. So when he calls, the 911 operator asks the Samaritan for his location. Well, he immediately says the Shell station driving north of North Houston Avenue at FM 1960. So she tells him, oh, you're in Humble. Let me transfer you. So she's transferring the call to the city of Humble. City of Humble dispatcher. And of course, they immediately go through the protocol. Do you need fire, police, ambulance? And the Good Samaritan responded, probably police, because I'm following a possible robbery suspect. And then, of course, the operator's trying to get the location. And at this point, we figured that where the Good Samaritan is, there are no street signs and it's dark already. This is December, so it's getting darker earlier. And the Good Samaritan suddenly pauses, and there's an exchange that we can hear on the phone conversation. And I apologize for not having this exchange. I used to have it, and then I've lost it. But the exchange between the Good Samaritan and someone else. And we can hear the Good Samaritan saying, "That's cool, man, that's cool." And then, no, oh my God, I've been shot. He shot me twice. He shot me. And that's it. And then it's followed by silence. At 7:12, the police station, not 911, but the police station gets, no, I'm sorry, it does get a 911 call, the clerk, but because it's a landline, he gets the Humble dispatcher. And the clerk had been instructed and escorted to the walk-in coolers and asked to count to 500 or he would kill the clerk. So the clerk, after counting up to 500, calls and reports that she's been robbed. And at this point, the dispatcher doesn't know anything else, that the Good Samaritan has left this location and this is a robbery. So the police is sent and the crime scene unit is dispatched to the Shell station to go process the scene of the armed robbery. And the police officers, while there, they interview the clerk, the witness. There were a couple witnesses, and then the CSI processes the robbery scene. The Shell's clerk indicates where the suspect's getaway vehicle was, in its direction that took off from. So again, this is the Shell station on the bottom corner, and the aerial shows it right in here. And across the street was this Exxon. So the Exxon was then the place where the vehicle that the suspect got into when they left the scene. So here's a Shell station. This is North Houston Avenue, and this is the Exxon, and the vehicle was here. And that was the description that, again, between the witnesses, they gathered that. So one of the first things that they immediately noticed is that the surveillance equipment at the Shell station is not working. Interestingly enough, across the street, again, where the suspect vehicle was seen, there's this empty or partially eaten fruit tray, plastic tray, and a towel. And that's going to become very important. So at this point, this is all that we have. That this sign is just as a reference that we can see across the street. So this is the aerial where the gas station, the Shell is. And let me go back. And again, so the Shell station is right here on this quadrant and northbound. So this is North Houston Avenue. This is 1960. And again, here it is. Here's a Shell station. And then this is going to be our North Houston Avenue. So the information that they had at that point was the following: that he was a black male, very dark skin, and an approximate height. Description: he did have a gun. Something interestingly that the clerk noticed is that he had safety goggles around his neck, and got into a small passenger car, light in color, and of course went northbound on Houston Avenue. At 7:24, dispatch receives a call from a caller that reports a possible car accident. And what the caller is saying, and I put this triangle here to denote the approximate location of the caller. So when the caller calls, he advises that he had just witnessed a car drive off the northbound service road of Highway 59. This is Highway 59. This is the service road. So he describes that the vehicle was traveling as he's on this Townsend Road, and it's already dark. He can see the headlights. And what he does, he witnesses the vehicle come off the roadway and do exactly this. So that calls his attention because it's now going into the grassy into the ravine area. So he's thinking that maybe someone is having a heart attack, or maybe someone is intoxicated while again driving off the road, and would like maybe a police officer to go and investigate. So dispatch sends an officer to that location. When the police arrives at the scene, they notice the following. There is no visible damage to the vehicle. It is actually a new vehicle in great shape. They notice that the vehicle's motor is still on, while all doors are locked. They notice that the front passenger door's window is completely rolled down. And so they reach in to unlock the doors. The only occupant in this vehicle is an unconscious white male in the driver's seat. He's wearing a seatbelt and is leaning towards the passenger side. The car shift gear, they noticed, is also on the D drive selection. So they do the vitals on the subject, and they went ahead and called me to come process the scene at this point. EMS gets there, and they determine that our passenger does not have a pulse. Again, these are the characteristics they notice. The engine is running. The gear shift is still in drive. So the only reason that the vehicle has come to a stop, it is because of the terrain. Again, first week in December 5th, we've gotten quite a bit of rain in that area. It's known for accumulating the rain and causing it to mud. So again, the other characteristic on this is that the front passenger's window is completely rolled down. And you can see it here, how we can see that rear door, okay, while all the other ones are up. So these characteristics are telltale signs. When I get there, of course, I'm taking those photographs and just showing some of the surroundings. They had called the fire truck so that it could light up because that area had no artificial lighting. So while examining the vehicle there at the scene, I noticed what was consistent with, obviously, the blood where the Good Samaritan sat, and I noticed some defects on the seat. We'll have a better slide here in a minute to identify those. So while we're there, we start thinking that perhaps these two scenes may be connected. So the scene of the robbery at the gas station that again took place in this oval shaped place, and then our shooting ends up happening up here, or where our Good Samaritan is at. So we look to see what the most probable route that the Good Samaritan took. And this is what we determined that it must have been. So again, leaving the roadway at this point and then coming to a final stop on its own right there. So here's a gas station. And again, going northbound on North Houston Avenue, then taking a left on Townsend, and all this while following the suspect, and then going on this roadway behind the shopping center, and then coming out to the feeder or the service road, and then at one point getting off the roadway and coming to a dead stop. So from the roadway, again, the weather back then at that point was one where it had been raining, so we can see that the weeds were quite long. And so that allowed us to see the thread, the marks that the wheels left. And we were able to determine and walk back and be able to determine at which spot it was that the vehicle of the Good Samaritan ended up going into this grassy ravine. These photos are taken from up on the shoulder, on the service road of the highway. While I'm examining the vehicle, I noticed something, and one of the things that I've always liked to identify, it's that woohoo moment, right? When we find that one thing that we know it's going to be critical for our case. In this situation here, again, the vehicle is still there. We can see the grass in the background. And I'm just documenting the vehicle, and I noticed that sitting right on this dash, right here by the speedometer, is a spent fire cartridge casing that identified to then see that it was a 9mm Luger. Again, what are the odds to have found that in that moment? And those are some of the things that I always like to point out in my trainings, is that had I waited until the vehicle was towed, that casing would have not been there anymore. It would have probably been on the floorboard. And what are the odds of even finding it if it would have even stayed in the car? So how important that casing and its location, we're going to see in following slides. So again, here's the location where I recovered this casing from the scene. So I was pointing earlier, again, this is there at the scene. And remember, our Good Samaritan said, I've been shot twice. And sure enough, in the vehicle, I noticed what appear to be what we call defects caused by possible gunshots, by bullets. And I noticed there was one in the seat and then one in the doorpost of the vehicle. Again, all this consistent with where the Good Samaritan was sitting, and now starting to make sense as its trajectory and why they ended up there. Remember, we had the front passenger window roll down. So again, these are some other photos showing the tire marks of where the vehicle went through to where it finally went to a dead stop. While we're examining the vehicle, I remember that we had just gotten a thermal imaging device at the police department. I was also in the SWAT team for 20 years, and this was a piece of equipment that we had just acquired, and we used to be able to find people hiding in places without any light. So obviously it's a thermal imaging device. It also has a reverse setting, which is what we ended up using in this case. I thought that because it would be a cold night, by now it's probably 1 a.m, and while I have one casing right on the speedometer, I needed to find the second one. So I thought that if we used this device and did the reverse setting, this would allow us to view a colder than the environment item in wherever it is that we're examining. So the casing being of the material that I had now figured that from the one that I recovered from the vehicle, I was hoping that this would help in locating the second casing. So one of the officers volunteered. He went to the SWAT van and retrieved it, brought it back, and it must have taken, I don't know, what seemed to be like seconds. It must have taken 10 minutes to find the casing on the roadway. And it was exactly in that area where we last saw that the vehicle was on the feeder part. And then from there, it went into the ravine. So I would have never found it because, look, it was in one of those grooves that are located on the side of the shoulder. And that allows for causing the friction that wakes you up when you get off the road. So it was actually another great feeling whenever we discover this. And again, it's going to be right up here. And from that position, we can then see and follow. You could view where the vehicle went into onto the right. So that we know where the shooting took place. And then at that point, our Good Samaritan then just let go of the brake, more likely, and letting the vehicle advance. You can see it here on the bottom where the showing as a reference, but it's right there. It's in one of those groups. Oops, I wasn't supposed to click that. Again, there it is. And we can see it on the side of the road. Is it showing the text that I'm dictating now?
Yes.
Oops, I didn't mean to do that. How do I get away from that?
I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I think it was maybe a setting that
Yeah, because I clicked
accidentally.
lower.
Yeah.
I clicked lower to point out where the scale was, and this other screen popped up. Yeah. Should I just close it and then open it on this one again?
You're welcome to try. It's not
Yeah,
interfering with anything. If you want to keep the caption there, that's fine too.
Okay. All right. So again, a close-up of this spent casing confirms that it's identical in caliber and in brand to the one that I recovered from the vehicle. So that's a wonderful feeling. Now I have recovered both spent casings consistent with the 2 wounds that our Good Samaritan shows, and then also the 2 defects that are in the side of the vehicle, one on the seat and one on the post. The vehicle is towed for processing to the police station. The following morning, I went ahead and went to the autopsy, and I cut out the top to cut out the case number, Emmy's case number and his name and all that. That's where it looks kind of weird. But on top, it obviously says police use only. I don't think they use these anymore. Again, this was back in 2006. But my main, my motive for doing this, for going to the autopsy, was to get the measurements of the entry and the exit for my reconstruction. So I wanted to get a relationship to get an idea of where the entry wounds were and then the exit, so that I could then do my reconstruction with a mannequin and be able to place it in the car. So I did that. I got the entry wounds, and we can see that they're both on the right side. And I got the exit, and we can see that they're both on the left side. Look at the difference on the entry. One of them is right under the breast, the right breast, where the other one is actually on the side. And that is understandable because obviously there's movement between the shots, right? So the exit, we can see that they both pretty much came out around the same angle. So again, I took my measurements that I needed so that I could go ahead and do my reconstruction. I got me a mannequin, took those same measurements, and did that. Now, remember that, very important, the window was rolled down. The shots went in from the right and out to the left. So this area becomes our most important area at this point, because now we know that the suspect fired at our Good Samaritan from the passenger right door, of which the window was open. So I was very interested in processing all of this for fingerprints, and did. And again, the vehicle, it was a light color vehicle, which helped tremendously. It was a new, clean vehicle, which again, it was perfect. And what I ended up noticing immediately is that just above the door handle, and we can see this area here, I got a partial palm print. And what I did is I took many photos, but this one here is already the photo of my lift. And that was to show where the lift came from. And we can see the marks coming across. But what I wanted to show is, again, it's where the placement of that hand was. And it wasn't on the side, it wasn't upside down, but it was consistent with a natural position when we would put our hand down. So that was a very good feeling until I remembered how many people were at the scene. So I remember asking my CSI, I'm like, uh-oh, you're going to have to go back and look for the left palm impression of the 17 people that were there. Okay. And this was record drivers, supervisors, patrolmen, everybody that was there. Ended up being 17 people, firemen, EMS. And then remembered they unlocked the vehicle from that open window. So at first I was disappointed because I just felt that it was going to belong to one of them, leaning. But my CSI went up and did a great job and got me the 17 left hands. And I ended up making comparisons and eliminated all 17. So now I'm very excited because it didn't belong to either one, to any of them. Here we can see again the placement of the hand, and we can see it where it's a natural. We can see where the door running, this is again where the window comes out of. And we can see that, again, the very natural placement of the hand and the quality for the fingerprint examiners. I mean, you would love to get anything like that. It gets us excited. There's a lot of ridge detail on that palm print. So on some of these photos, you can see on this one here, for example, I just went ahead and did the tape. So I took a lot of photos once developed. I just protected it with the lifting tape, okay? And then this one here is another where the card is superimposed on top to show the location. But here we can see that the tape is there. So one of the things that I wanted to keep in mind was but when we arrest our suspect, what would he say? What excuse would he give? Well, you know, it was dark, I couldn't see. Well, I thought he had a weapon. So I ended up doing photography considering all those conditions. I did them in dark conditions with lights coming from behind to, again, do a reconstruction and see what our suspect in case came up and saying, well, you know, I thought he had a gun, whatever reason. So I did the reconstruction in the best conditions as it was that night from the shooter's perspective. And here again, you can see that the print has been developed, but it's with tape. And then what I have on this one is both shots. So I have one that comes through on the front of the body, and then this one that comes more to the side. And then the exits, this is the one that went through, and both of them went through and through. So this one that came in from the front part under the breast came through, and then this is the one that lodged on the door. Okay, it lodged on the door post, not the door, but the door post. And I ended up easily recovering that. The medical examiner described this as being the fatal shot. Once again, we can see that the trajectory ended up there. And once I opened that part, there it was. It was very easy to recover. Now, the one from the side, that one went through and through, and then I could see on the seat that there was a bump, a small defect, and then we can also see the blood consistent with that wound. And what all I had to do was making a small cut onto the seat, and I was able to recover. Now, because that bullet did not hit any hard surfaces, you will see its condition in almost perfect shape. So now what do we have as far as latent prints? So our latent prints, we have, remember that fruit tray that was in the parking lot? Well, that fruit tray, I went ahead and ended up collecting. Our CSI ended up collecting it, Joe Culp, and I processed it for prints. from under one of the containers. They had 2 containers of dip. It was like a dressing, ranch, whatever it was. Well, under one of those, there was a partial print. And that's what you can see here. This round shape, it's from that container within that. I took photos, and one of the detectives went to the local places to see if there was any recording of someone buying that, and went around into about a 20-mile radius, and there were no stores that sold that. Then I had my palm print from the car, and then from the gas station. Again, our CSI ended up developing some great prints from the door, okay, from the glass. And so those were great quality. They appear to be from the left hand. And so I took them to enter into the automated fingerprint identification system. At the time, the Humboldt Police Department did not have the own APHIS unit. So what I had to do was go to Harris County, which is downtown Houston, to use their system. And at the time, that was an agreement that we had. So I was a certified APHIS operator, and then I was also able to do my own searches. So this is a photo that I just mentioned that I put together so that our detective could go around the stores and see if any. And here are the 2 containers that I was describing. And again, you can see where under this one, that it's even bent underneath. I ended up developing a partial latent, okay? Right here. You can see where the light is reflecting because it's no longer flat. That impression, again, it appeared to be from the side of a digit, which is consistent when you lift something, okay? But unfortunately, it wasn't enough for making a search in APHIS. It was very weak. There was very little information. However, the ones on the glass, I did identify. I did get a hit. I did get a suspect, a candidate, and ended up identifying the 8 and 9 fingers, which is the left middle and the left ring fingers of a person. And when I went to print the photo, unfortunately, it was a white male. So not our suspect. And all that meant that it was a customer with a criminal record. So in the fingerprint world, we still call that an ident. So I still added to my stats, an identification is an identification, whether it's the complainant or someone else. However, for this case, it didn't help us. While I'm sitting there, this friend of mine, Gail Mills, who was also the same CSI and latent print examiner like I was, happened to ask me. She said, "Hey, Mingo, what are you doing? What are you working on?" So I told her the information, and she said, "That's funny. I just developed a left palm off a newspaper from a robbery where the newspaper was left behind." And I said, "Well, that's weird because I don't remember a newspaper being in mine." So I immediately called my CSI and I asked him, I said, "Hey, was there a newspaper at the gas station?" And he said, "No, no newspaper." I said, "Okay." She said, "Well, but we're looking at the left palm, right?" And that's what he used to cover the gun. So she developed this great palm print. And so I said, "Can I borrow that?" So she said, "Sure." So I put it on a thumb drive. I drove it with me, and it was already late. But next morning, I came back to the office, and I compared both palms, and lo and behold, that's our left palm from the same person. So now we have our Good Samaritan killer also identified from a newspaper of a gas station robbery. Ironically, that was also a Shell station, but it was in the county. So the city of Humboldt, while it is in the Harris County jurisdiction, the city of Humboldt, it's a city of its own, so that anything outside the city it's the county, and that's where this robbery had taken place. Ours was obviously in the city. So she tells her detectives, hey, look, we have the same poem. I called her all excited. And the detectives called me. They said, hey, what do you have? Because now we have 14 other cases with the same MO, where this guy is going into the Shell stations and robbing. So I said, well, the only thing I got is these 2 fire cartridges. I got the casings, I got the bullets, and I called my friend, Rick Anderson, Firearms, and he went ahead and put a rush to the case, and he came back and said, belongs to a High Point 9mm semi-auto. So that's all we had. And again, this is what I refer to as the shape of the bullet. This is the one that hit the doorpost. This is the one that I recovered from the seat. So again, as far as the evidence results, the palm print, I eliminated all of the 17, and we ended up individualizing to the one on the paper, on the newspaper as well. The latent prints from the Shell station belong to a customer. From the fruit trays, we're going to see what happens to those. And then everything else went to ballistics. So the detectives went ahead and met with me, and they said, look, we have these 7 armed robberies with the same MO. What we're going to do is we're going to go back, and now we're going to start working these armed robberies because you have a capital murder, while ours are just robbery. So they did exactly that. All we had at this point was a High Point 9mm. They went back and searched to see if there was any evidence, and they called me. They said, we got this great video that we want to go ahead and do a press release. So again, our palm print from Humble and the palm print from Harris County developed a surveillance video from another robbery, and we did a press release. And on December 19th, this is only 13 days later, we get this press release, and the Houston Chronicle at the time went ahead and did this, and they put the article on there showing photo may show man who killed the Samaritan. And again, this is from another robbery. Look at the safety goggles that were described. And this here was in spring. So I get a phone call, and the woman says, I know the man. He has fathered my child. Where do I get my money? So the reward money. She gave me the name. I went to HPD. HPD at the time were getting palm prints of every person they arrested. Every suspect that was arrested that would get palm prints. There were no palm prints on APHIS at the time. So, but in order to get these palm prints, I needed a name. So once I gave them the name, they were able to give me, to look in their files, and sure enough, they gave me the palm prints. I went and picked it up, made my comparison, and identified the developed print from the car to be Keith Hines. We ended up getting an arrest and search warrant. We sent the team out there, and he pulled out of his house, and they arrested him down the street. This is the vehicle. Again, remember the description. When I processed the vehicle, there was some interesting evidence in there. First of all, there is a receipt, and this receipt showed December 5th of 2006 at 1900 hours, 40 minutes, 31 seconds. He fueled $21 in cash. This is the same day, the same evening of our shooting of the Good Samaritan. Okay, so I wanted to see where this location was. And this is 8.7 miles from our Good Samaritan. So the time is consistent, the location is consistent, and he still has a receipt in his car. And this is, again, 14 days later. So in the vehicle, he's got some other items, but most interestingly, he had the newspaper, he's looking at himself. He had the part of the newspaper looking at himself still, and don't know, remember, he used the newspaper to rob these gas stations. Don't know if he was saving that. He didn't have the sports. He didn't have the classified or the front page. He had the city and state section, specifically where his photo was. So we get a search warrant for his place. And while we're going through the garage, I find this bag, and inside the bag was a High Point firearms case. And when I opened it, I found a High Point 9mm. And these photos were taken in the lab that once I took it there. So I called my buddy. I said, guess what I have? My firearms expert. And I took it to him next morning. And he identified that the ammunition was the same. Remember that partial latent from the fruit tray? Well, now that we had him in custody, I was able to get better rolling of that finger, and I made a comparison, and it ended up being the inside of the number 5 finger, the right pinky. And then Gail Mills ended up verifying my identification. So also in this bag was some interesting items, There was a hat, there were some glasses, there were some safety glasses, and a t-shirt. Well, lo and behold, that's exactly what he wore when he committed these robberies. This t-shirt is actually his work t-shirt, and his name was embroidered. But what he did, he turned it inside out, and you could see on the pictures where the thread of the t-shirt is showing, because he would turn the t-shirt inside out. So with all this, I thought, man, all I need is a mannequin to dress him up and get him ready for court. So I did exactly that. I went to the mall, Deerbrook Mall. I borrowed actually they gave it to me, a mannequin, and I carried this mannequin across the parking lot, put it into the van, and then I came and I dressed him up to make him look even down to the watch. And when the clerk was shown the lineup, she identified. So I know that we're getting there on time. Again, this is just the evidence results. I individualized the latent from the fruit tray, the one from the car, and then this is a timeline of the events. The most impressive part, again, we didn't have anything. Remember, we didn't even have a license plate. All we had was a palm print. That had Houston not had their palm prints, we would have never identified. Had Gail not asked me what I was doing, and this is where I like to also stress the importance of talking, of networking, of, let's talk about the cases. You just never know. You just really, really never know. Again, had Gail not asked me, I would have there was no way I could have run my palms, because there were very few palm print impressions in the system. So everything just fell right into the most necessary events to be able to get the information we needed. So one of the things that I would do also was I would meet with the detectives every 3 days or so. And one of the things that I did promise, that I didn't know how I would do it, but I told them, I said, we're going to get this guy before Christmas. And look that we did. So again, he was arrested on the 20th, and I'll never forget that a couple of the detectives said, man, I really didn't think that we would do it before Christmas, before the holidays. So then 15 months later, right before I went to the FBI National Academy, we ended up finally going to court. The clerk does not show to court. That was the 3rd time they had already reset the case, and they didn't want to continue to wait. She went back to her country. She was from the other side of the world. And what they did is they agreed, instead of giving them the death penalty, to give them life term with no parole and no appeals. But 9 officers, we all went to court. I took my mannequin. I was ready. But again, this is what it came out to. The excellent teamwork, again, and I can't thank enough, the first responders from Humboldt, the management, and all the detectives, the supervisors, my CSI guy, Joe Culp, Harris County the detectives from Harris County, Gail Mills specifically, Rick Anderson, the firearms examiner, HPD, Sheila Clark. When I called her, I knew her number, knew her by name. She put that paw print aside for me. The Harris County DA, again, he was very, very good and supportive, Mr. Bill Moore. And of course, more than anything, the Jackson family. The Jackson family, for their trust and patience. And then they also donated a piece of equipment for the lab. I ended up getting Peace Officer of the Year for that event. And here's my email address. If there's anything you need, any information, I really want to thank Rebecca for the opportunity, again, for allowing me to make this presentation. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was awesome. That is a very, I don't want to say it was complicated. It was complicated, but it was also very intertwined. There were so many moving parts. That's a lot. That's a lot of information.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lot happening. You were really on it with that. I did have a couple of just quick questions. Why was he wearing safety goggles? Like, was there a reason why he had? Was it like to I don't know, confuse victims or?
Very good. Yes, ma'am. Because he was smart on that aspect, because many of the victims, only when they were asked for the facial description, they focused on the goggles.
Okay.
So they took their attention away from, they would describe him wearing glasses and goggles, but they couldn't remember if he had a mustache or if he had any features, because they were focused on those goggles. So
interesting. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So did he steal anything from the victim or the victim's vehicle when they were having that interaction?
That's a great question too, because he actually had $800 in his pocket.
Wow.
And that was one of the things that the father, who came to the lab several times while we were working the case, he said, Villarreal, if he would have asked him for the money, he would have given it to him. What we found out is that our Good Samaritan was actually going to go Christmas shopping that night. He had taken money out of the bank and he was going to go Christmas shopping with cash. And that's why he had that money on his person. So apparently the exchange was, we can only imagine, one that took place of, stop following me, why are you following me, of that context. It was never of a robbery. It was that fear that, this guy's going to turn me in.
Wow. So I was thinking about when you were talking, you were processing the vehicle, and you had mentioned a few times that the weather conditions had been cold, rainy. Did you have any concerns about those atmospheric type conditions that might affect the way you were going to process the vehicle while it was still in the field?
So, and the only reason I said that was to describe the ground itself. Mm-hmm. It was never really a situation where it was happening there. So we did not have any rain coming down or any mist or any situation where the weather was a factor, but it had been before. So therefore the ground was mushy, muddy, but it was not much of a factor at that point anymore. Yeah.
Okay. And I was thinking about the newspaper. So if I understand correctly, it was from a different person at a different agency with a different piece of evidence in the newspaper. Was that also recovered from a robbery, or is that just
correct?
Another robbery?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So while we're talking about what I'm telling her about the case, she recognized the MO, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I have the very same MO," and specifically the goggles, but most importantly, what really triggered to her, I remember, it was the escorting the clerk back to the cooler and telling him, "You need to count to 500 or I will kill you." So that phrase right there, it's like, whoa, what are the odds? Yeah. And then she read in the report where the description was the same as far as a suspect description or similar, but the MO of the goggles, of him escorting to the back cooler, and you must count, to 500. If you come out, I'm going to kill you. So, and that newspaper, and she was so excited because she had just developed that palm print, which again, it didn't mean much at the time because APHIS didn't do anything with palm prints. So
yeah, I remember that. I remember those days where we were fingers only. And yeah, I think that was, we finally got access into palms, I want to say it was around 2009. So anything prior to 2009, it was fingers or it was nothing. Yeah,
yes, ma'am.
I remember that. So you said that this guy had been, I think you said 7 robberies. Was it 7?
Yep.
What were the other types of evidence that were used to connect those robberies to this particular case and this homicide?
So the only thing that they had in similarity was the MO.
Wow. Okay.
And I remember the detective specifically saying, hey, listen, these are armed robberies. I haven't had time to work them, but now that we have a capital murder in Humble, we're going to go ahead and work them. So they were just classifying them as Shell gas station. That was one of the clues. They were all Shell gas stations. We don't know why. And even the one in Humble, it was a Shell gas station. So it was something. But then ironically, and here's the thing, that where he went to gas up, it was also a Shell gas station where he paid $21 cash 20 minutes after he shot our Good Samaritan. But the reason, because that was right around where he lived. So they knew him. So he was using the cash that he stole from the gas stations to pay cash.
So was the fruit tray one of the items that he stole from this Shell station? Like why it was so random that he'd be carrying a fruit tray around?
Yeah, so we never understood what that was. In fact, and again, I'm glad you brought that up because I remember my CSI asked me to check by with him on my way to the PD. And I did. And he goes, do you think that's evidence? You know, pointing at the fruit tray. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know how record drivers at night, you know, they get like police cars and side by side. And that was an empty lot behind the gas station, the Exxon. He said, maybe a record driver's left it. And then I said, I think that's too healthy. So I said, we never know, you know, let's take it. And that's another one that I say, you just never know. You know, it's not going to say, hey, I'm evidence, right? And we didn't know. We truly did not know that whether that was going to be evidence or not. And, but so what we're thinking is that also the Good Samaritan was the passenger. And there was a driver. There was someone else there. And at one point, they decided just to go ahead and leave that to take off. But they left it in that parking lot. So they must have been sitting there, I guess, for a while, eating that fruit tray until they decided to leave and they didn't want to take the fruit tray with them. So.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It's a shame that the video wasn't working.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a shame.
You know, and it's so common though. And because all the other gas stations, that was the only video that they were able to get the footage. Out of the 7, only 1. But it was great. But it was so good. And I'm glad that they had it.
That's amazing. This was a great case. I really appreciate your time and sharing your information with us. This was so interesting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. And thank you for sharing your contact info. In case anybody has questions or wants to follow up with you or asks you potentially to provide this information at another conference or someplace else, they know how to get in touch with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I am going to go ahead and close it down now. We had a really interesting chat. You've got a lot of friends in the chat that came to visit. So that'll be up on YouTube very soon. The recording will be available on YouTube very soon. So thank you for your time. And if you ever want to come back, all you have to do is let me know. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. Hopefully we'll see you in Orlando.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you at the II.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.